Hey cousins, welcome to another episode of Respectfully. I had to make sure that this new bill in California is on everyone's radar. Now, as you guys know, PragerU is a 501c3 nonprofit, so we are not here to tell you how to vote or what to think politically. However, I want to make sure you guys are educated on what is happening in our country and what it can mean for the rest of society. So over here in California, a new bill has quietly been passed called SB 771. And essentially what that means is that there can be fines up to $1 million impacting social media platforms for amplifying hateful content. To me, what that sounds like is that potentially they are going to start really cracking down on the visibility of anyone who does not agree with the woke, overly progressive narratives that they have been trying to shove down our throat for a very long time. And when you start putting $1 million fines on platforms, I think that's going to scare them into acquiescing, and we all need to be aware of what may be soon to come. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Welcome to Respectfully. Okay, you guys. So yes, SB 771. So this has been passed by California legislature this month here in September 2025, and it is targeting social media platform algorithms for amplifying hateful content against marginalized groups. So some of the examples that they have provided are race, religion, gender, immigration status. So if you have the audacity to point out patterns or point out the things that everybody knows is happening in our country, especially in a state like California, where we are completely being wrecked by illegal immigration, there may now be consequences on social media platforms if they have the audacity to allow that content to be amplified. So the legislature, which was first drafted back in February, I believe. It's gone through many different drafts and versions. And a lot of people just didn't think it was serious when it first got brought up because no one thought that this was actually going to pass because, in my opinion, it looks like a direct clash with the First Amendment and our First Amendment freedom of speech rights. But it has now passed through pretty much all of the gates, and it's just waiting for Governor Gavin Newsom's signature. So it imposes civil penalties. And if you're wondering what that means, civil penalties just means it's not criminal, but it still is going to be enforced. So civil penalties up to $1 million per violation on platforms with $100 million plus in annual revenue. So if you know the name of the platform, odds are they have over $100 million of annual revenue. So TikTok, X, Instagram, etc. And this is largely inspired by X loosening some of the reins on what people are able to say on social media, which I told y'all the second we started getting free speech on social media, the first thing y'all did on X was have the N-word trending. And I would never forgive y'all for that because it's exactly why we can't have nice things. What you have now done is you have empowered legislators here in California to put forth a bill like this because they are going to try to attribute it to all of the violence that we are seeing that ironically comes from the left side more often than not. But I digress. Back to the point here. They are going to be putting these penalties, again, up to $1 million on these major platforms if they are caught amplifying hateful content. And, it would be different if it were talking about violence. I could understand it if it were talking about the things where they are doing direct calls to violence. But as we have seen before, especially on apps like TikTok, they've been working very hard to try to fix their algorithm. I've actually been working closely with their team and some of their policy people. Every time I get a hate speech violation, I send it over to them and they're like, okay, you were teetering the line here. And other times they're like, no, this should not have been caught by their AI. But that being said, that's still not going to be enough. Hate speech, when you are allowing it to be up to California, that's going to be you simply saying that per capita, Black people are afraid of that conversation. That's going to be simply saying that, oh, you have the audacity to say there's not more than two genders. You're saying that being two-spirit or non-binary isn't a real thing. Then they are going to crack down on these platforms if those kind of videos are going viral. This is going to lead to complete and utter over-moderation. And again, it clashes with our First Amendment rights. Now, this is an interesting time for a law like that to get passed because Google and YouTube just earlier this week have been admitting to the fact that, which we already knew, I don't know why they're acting like this was a secret, but they were suppressing creators due to COVID and kicked off multiple users because of their COVID policies, where if you had the audacity to say any of the things that a year or two later ended up being confirmed even by Fauci, as true. And sometimes there were even creators that I saw would get kicked off of platforms, especially YouTube, if they would post videos of Fauci saying exactly what we all know to be true today. Fauci was one of the first people talking about some of the, lack of testing of the vaccine and talking about how the vaccine doesn't necessarily give you immunity. It just makes your symptoms be lessened. I think you guys have forgotten how awful that era was. It's been 5 years, but some people are acting like that can't come back. And I think we need to keep that very much in the forefront of conversations, because everything that happened during COVID, it still has wrecked our society. And if you think we can't go back there, then you don't know how history works. But that being said, Google and YouTube, they're actually planning on bringing back various users and allowing various users to get their platforms back. But it's like, for what now? These platforms that lost all their momentum, if you lost your platform back in 2020 and you reinstate your platform, odds are your algorithm is just going to be absolutely wrecked. So it's really not rectifying the situation there. And it's really upsetting to me, because I remember so vividly, even being a liberal in 2020, because a lot of people assume that I was like pushing vaccine mandates and stuff on people because I was a liberal in 2020. No, I was in the BLM world of it. When it came to the vaccine, I heard of the Tuskegee projects, okay, and the experiments, what they were doing to black folk, and they were having black folk get the same medicine, quote unquote, as the white people, but really the black people had experiments done on us. So that's a real thing. If you haven't looked into Tuskegee, you need to. Maybe I should do an episode about it. But black people weren't rocking with that. Black people were taking our sweet time to go and get that vaccine. You did not see us being the ones policing people about that. But that being said, in 2020, I very vividly remember influencers that I personally knew. They weren't big influencers, but they were mostly people in the fitness field, because around then when I was a teenager, I worked at a gym. So I had a lot of, personal trainer friends who became fitness influencers. And I remember there was this one girl in particular who her entire livelihood came from online coaching, and she was injured from the vaccine. She didn't tell people to not get it. She didn't tell people that it's bad for you. She just said, this is my personal experience, diagnosed. She was in the hospital, and she literally, by definition, was vaccine injured, and she ended up losing her entire platform and never got it back. And it completely destroyed her, because it's like, not only now does she have this, potentially lifelong health issue, but she also lost her entire livelihood because of what the social media giants decide was not allowed. Okay, so if you don't think that they're going to take that same aggressive energy and take every possible opportunity they can, especially a state that's money hungry like California, they are going to be really cracking down on these platforms. And it's so ironic to me, because they're saying that this is accountability for hate speech. How about accountability for censoring the truth? How about accountability for the election interference? Okay, because you have Mark Zuckerberg, who has come and exposed so much of what was happening at Meta during the election. And again, this is just objective truth. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg himself was very vocal about the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop story, things with COVID, even things that were proven to be true, all of these different things, he was told that there was pressure from the left, from the former administration, to crack down and censor and suppress the information that people were trying to put on the internet, and deeming things as false or missing context when they really, really weren't. So when they're saying that there needs to be accountability for hate speech, how about accountability for lying? How about accountability for allowing hate speech against the right and conservatives? I wonder if, they talk about they're going to start cracking down on hate speech. Is that going to apply to the awful things that they're saying about Charlie Kirk and about Erica Kirk? Is that going to apply? It's very, very crazy. I think we would be much more productive of a society if instead we started, just telling people, log off, get off the internet. If you are that triggered by what you're seeing on the internet, maybe you just don't belong on the internet. Maybe you should go outside and touch grass. Maybe you should just learn to scroll instead of sitting there and allowing yourself to be so hurt and so affected by what you saw on TikTok. Please be so for real. But just some more of the details of how this works. The penalties are, again, up to $1 million fines per willful violation on these platforms, and up to $500,000 for reckless ones, with potentially billions in aggregate exposure. Now, the enforcement, it means the Attorney General can sue these platforms, but to clarify, it does not have any direct fines on users. So if I, for example, say something that like there's only two genders, they might not fine me me, but they might find any platform that has the audacity to allow my video to go viral. So if you start to suddenly see, fewer conservatives going viral, it's likely because California is cracking down on these platforms. And even though the platforms might not be based in California, it's a nationwide issue when so many users are in California. Some people were saying that it might just mean that people in California will get their algorithms differently than the rest of the state. I really don't realistically see the platforms doing that. If anything, I just see them cracking down on all conservatives because why? They've done it before. I remember when I first started making content in 2021, how difficult it was to, survive in the algorithm because it was constantly suppressing voices of conservatives. I mean, heck, I'm on YouTube. I'm growing on every platform right now. YouTube is the slowest. And why is that? I would guess, my opinion, it's because YouTube doesn't like conservatives on this platform. They're very selective on who it is that they allow to build their platform quickly, because it makes no sense why even on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, I'm even growing on Threads, but on YouTube, it's slower and it's steady. But I really appreciate every single cousin that tunes in for every episode as we fight through this algorithm and we grow slowly but surely as we grow this whole cookout. Now, the last thing I'll say about this is it's very dangerous when we continue to allow these states, especially for it to slide under the radar like it did, for it to be so slick of California to work towards, pushing forth this legislation. I'm very scared that we're going to end up like the UK, where in the UK, they're already putting people in a position where they can be fined or potentially even end up in jail if they say anything about protected groups. And that's why in the UK, their culture is as destroyed as it is now. The UK is absolutely unrecognizable because they're all afraid to call out the obvious problems that are happening in their country. And many of those lead to one issue, which is radical Islam. Okay. Over in the UK, burlap sacks for everybody over there. And if you have the audacity to post that or say it out loud, they crack down on you very, very aggressively. And it's sad. It's very sad. And it's scary. And we have the Bill of Rights here in America to protect us from that. But when you have, certain bills like this, it really starts to make a slippery slope on how powerful our Constitution actually is. So I would love to know what you guys think of it. I, again, not telling you this of how to vote. This is a 501c3 nonprofit. I'm just telling you, I think that we all should be educated and aware of what may be soon to come. And if you start to see fewer and fewer conservatives on your feed, it might just be because the social media algorithms are afraid of a $1 million fine. It can be doubled, though, if it's about a minor. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you, cousins, for joining in for another episode of Respectfully. While you can still see me, California, y'all can kiss my behind. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.